and today I'm going to be showing you how to make Dirtybird style house. Now, as usual, you can get the project file and samples, a MIDI, and presets from this video in the description on my Bandcamp. It's the first link in the description. You can't miss it. And yeah, let's dive in. So, to start off with, I'm going to show you this bass line, which sounds like this. And so the way I made this is basically it is a saw wave going into a low pass filter. That's really it. It's very simple to make these kind of bass sounds. It's just a matter of sort of getting it right. So like I said, all we have here is the saw wave and operator. And it's just going into this low pass filter. And then the point of the low pass filter and really what kind of makes this sound is just getting the frequency and the resonance right. Because if you get them just right, like I believe I have here, what you get is you get a little bit of that kind of saw wave edge coming through without all the high frequencies or high harmonics like you would have just playing it like that. So again, the key is just to sort of set this frequency and resonance right. It's got to be a combo of both of them to really bring out the saw wave characteristics without, again, just all those high harmonics. Now, as far as effects go on the sound, I just have this reverb, which is set very small. As you can see, I have the decay time very short, and the size is also very small. And this just kind of gives it a little bit more space. Obviously, with a bass line, you wouldn't really want like any kind of super long reverb. But I did notice, like in a lot of these kind of tracks, the basses, when they use these kind of bass lines that are just like long notes, they don't tend to have them just be like dry. Like there's usually a little bit of reverb or chorus or something like that on there. So I wanted to give it this reverb to just kind of give it that little bit of space, and it gives it like a little bit more texture as well because it isn't just a bare saw wave going into a low pass filter. Now it has, you know, a little bit of something more to it. And then the last effect I have on here is just this auto pan, which I'm using to do like a sort of fake sidechain effect. So if you don't know, with Ableton's auto pan, I'll bring it down so you can see here. Basically, what AutoPan does is it's just turning the volumes up and down of the left and right signal, and that's what causes the kind of side or auto panning effect. It's literally just turning the volumes of the left and right signal up and down in sort of unison in this way that causes this auto panning effect. But if you turn this phase knob down, then what happens is it's only turning the volume of the mono signal up and down. So you can use this to create a fake sidechain effect pretty easily because all you have to do is set the rate to quarter notes. So you have to click this BPM syncing button down here, set it to quarter notes, and then if you just switch this to a saw wave and then hit this normal switch to invert it, there you go. It's just like a sidechain. So that's what I did there. And the reason why I did that is just because it's a little bit easier to do it this way than to sidechain to the kick, because sometimes like you're kind of at the mercy of how the kick sounds and how the kick is going to respond with the sidechain and all that. And I'd rather just sort of work with an auto pan and make it a little bit simpler that way. Now, as far as notes on this bass go, it's not really too hard to make these kind of bass lines. Typically, you know, you just want to work around like quarter notes and eighth notes. So that's what I've done here. I have quarter notes and then eighth notes. And you just kind of want to, you know, give it like that bouncy feel with the eighth notes and quarter notes, which might sound a little bit strange because eighth notes and quarter notes are not typically bouncy. But between the drums and the bass here, you can kind of get that like bouncy sort of house feel. And yeah, I mean, it's very simple. This is just a very basic G minor pattern. Definitely not too difficult to write these kind of bass lines. So the next thing I have here is this little synthly, which sounds like this. And the way I made this is it's also a saw wave in operator. Oh, it's actually a square wave. Wow, my bad. So it's a square wave in operator. I set the envelope like this, so it's kind of like, you know, going up quickly, and then it's just like a little short pluck. And then I have this filter on here, which has an envelope, a little bit of resonance, and there's an automation there as well on the frequency, so the filter just kind of opens up there and, you know, sort of builds a little bit of tension in that first little 2-beat part that it plays during. This is just to give it a little bit more kind of like interest, because just leaving this blank, like without any automation, just felt kind of boring. Whereas this gives it, you know, a little bit of something to sort of signify you're going into a new part. Now as far as effects go, I have this echo on here, which I've set like this, so I have the left and right are not synced. and they're not synced to the BPM as well. And that's just to give it, you know, a dirtier kind of feel and like a little bit more of like an analog delay kind of feel is what I was going for. And then I had the reverb up on that a little bit, and the dry wet is set about there. Pretty simple. And then after that, I have another reverb actually. I just added this for a little bit more space because the echo on its own was cool, but it didn't quite, you know, like carry it. It kind of like faded out after a second, so I added this reverb to just make it ring out a little bit longer. And yeah, I just have the decay time turned up a bit, and the dry wet is set there. And then after that, all I have is this little auto pan doing that fake side shading I was talking about. Now, as far as the notes go on this sound, it's pretty simple. It's just this little G minor pattern, this little ARP that I made. And this is just like a nice thing. I hear this in a lot of Dirtybird tracks. Like, they do a lot of this kind of stuff where, again, it just kind of signifies, like, this is a new part. This is a 4-bar loop, but typically you would do this in the beginning of maybe, like, 8 or 16 bars, and it would just kind of help carry you between parts. So the next thing I will show you are the drums, which are actually pretty simple. They sound like this. So what we have going on here is we have this kick. Pretty simple, just like a powerful kind of, you know, house kick. Really nothing too crazy there. All I did to process this was I put on the saturator. So here's before the saturator. And then here's with. So the saturator is just beefing it up a little bit and giving it a little bit of drive, but like not too much. A lot of Dirtybird tracks do tend to have like pretty powerful kicks that are slightly distorted. Like they have that, but they also have the nice low end of a very clean kick. So that was kind of the point of the saturator here, to just not take it over the edge, but give it that little bit of like grit. So I have a little bit of drive here, and then I played around with the analog clip color setting. With these knobs, you know, you just kind of move them around, and you'll find it can give your stuff an interesting feel. So the next sound I have here is a shaker. It's pretty simple. This is mostly in the background. It's kind of like behind the hi-hats, and just giving it a little bit more swing. So pretty simple. I just have the shaker sample. I'll play it for you. And then we have this little pattern here where the velocities are kind of like staggered. So next thing is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. So this hi-hat is actually 2 layers. It's this layer and this layer. And the reason why I did this is because I had this one, but on its own, it wasn't really like cutting through as much as I wanted it to. Like it felt kind of weak. So I added this operator layer to kind of beef it up a little bit and just sort of accentuate the areas of it that I liked. So what I did to make this operator is basically, it's very simple actually. I just took white noise, I shaped it like this with the envelope, so pretty short decay, no sustain, and a little bit of release. And then I gave it this bandpass filter, and what the bandpass filter allows you to do is just hone in on a certain frequency range and just kind of, yeah, just play that. So that's what I did here. I have it set like this, so the frequency is there, and I gave it a bit of resonance. The resonance just gives it that kind of like metallic bump. And yeah, this is just to beef up the areas of this hi-hat sample that I liked. You can hear, yeah, they're just very similar harmonically and, you know, tonally, and I was just sort of trying to combine these two to beef up the one main hi-hat. The next thing is this clap. Pretty simple. With this, it's really more just about sample selection with these kind of claps. Like, I always try to find the nicest, crispest claps. Like, crispest, I don't know if that's a word. Claps that I can find. But, yeah. Very simple. You just sort of put in a very basic pattern. And then I have a little bit of reverb on here. Like, I have the dry wet down there, and the decay time is pretty low. So it's kind of subtle, but it just gives the clap a little bit more space in the mix. And, like, it's similar to the bass reverb, where it's not even so much about adding, like, a long reverb. It's just about adding, like, kind of something to the clap to bring it to life. Now, I do have this little thing here. That's kind of important. I noticed that in a lot of Dirtybird tracks, just adding that little clap on the 8th note before the last 4 there can really help. So yeah, and then the next thing here is this little fill snare. So this sounds like this. And that's very simple. I've just added a few little notes in here, just to give it this little fill at the end of every 4 bars, I guess. You know, pretty simple. You could do this with a lot of different types of sounds. I just grabbed this one. I'll show you the original sound real quick. And yeah, it just helps to signify that we're going into a new part. Now the last thing here are these little vocal chops, which sound like this. And I wanted to include these because these like low, deep vocals I think are very important for the kind of Dirtybird style. They're in a lot of those tracks. And they sound really cool. They really fit the style nicely, so I wanted to talk about it. So what I did to do these is I took these 2 little vocal chops. I'll show you. These are the original ones. And what I did was I pitched them down a whole octave on complex mode, so it's just going to pitch it down, no weird like formant shifting or anything like that. And then what I did was I put them in the thing here at the end of this bar. You can kind of do a lot with the vocal chops. Like, I've heard Dirtybird tracks where they just go through the whole track. I've heard ones where it's like this, where it's just on that last little bar for the transition. I've heard, like, you can do a lot of things with them. But yeah, just kind of put them in there like that, rhythmically. And then as far as effects go on the vocal chops, all I have is this little EQ, which is mostly just cutting out these, like, low mids. It just kind of gives it more of that, like, radio kind of, like, DJ mixer type of sound, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and then I boosted the mid, like, 1K a little bit, just to give it a little bit more signal going into the saturator, so that area would be a little bit more distorted, and it would give it a little bit more of that kind of mid-range grit that you want for these kind of vocals. So next thing I have is the saturator, and with this, I just gave it a little bit of drive, and just like the kick, I played around with this analog clip color setting. And I think it gives it a nice kind of texture. So yeah, and then the only other thing I have on there is the auto pan fake sidechain. So that's really it for this tutorial. You know, the main things to think about are, like I said, like these kind of bass lines where it's like quarter notes and eighth notes, but it still gives it that sort of groove. And then yeah, just sort of, you know, filling out the drums a lot. So that's gonna be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and maybe even share this video if it really helped you out. Once again, you get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets from this video in the description on my Bandcamp. It's the first link. You can't miss it. And yeah, I will see you guys again tomorrow with another tutorial.